pain from people is real, and sometimes it's the deepest kind of pain there is. It's one thing to be wounded by life's circumstances, by sickness, by disappointment, by financial struggle, but it's a whole different level of pain when the wound comes from another human being, especially someone you trusted, someone you loved, someone you thought would never be the one to hurt you. That kind of pain goes deeper than skin, deeper than emotion. It touches the soul. It shakes your sense of safety. It causes you to question your worth, your discernment, your strength. It's a betrayal that echoes in your memory, in your emotions, and sometimes even in your prayers. There are times when that pain feels like it owns you. You wake up with it. You go to sleep with it. You try to worship, but the memory of what they said or did haunts you. You try to pray, but the anger gets in the way. You try to move on, but every step forward feels like you're dragging chains. People may say get over it, but they don't know the weight of what you're carrying. They didn't see the knife go in. They didn't see the tears that soaked your pillow. They didn't hear the silence after the betrayal. They weren't there when your heart shattered behind your smile. And sometimes you wonder, why would God allow this? Why didn't he stop it? Why didn't he shield me from the blow? And yet, in the middle of those questions, in the middle of the pain, in the silence of those lonely nights, there's a whisper that rises above the noise of your suffering. Asterisk, asterisk, God heals. Asterisk, asterisk, he doesn't ignore pain. He doesn't dismiss wounds. He's not a distant God who turns his face when you cry. He is near to the brokenhearted. He binds up their wounds. He counts every tear. He sees what others didn't see. He knows what they'll never admit. And he moves with compassion, not only to comfort but to restore. God's healing doesn't always come the way we expect. Sometimes it starts with breaking us open before he builds us back up. Sometimes it starts with the courage to admit, yes, I was hurt. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I feel betrayed. Healing doesn't begin with pretending. It begins with honesty. Raw, real honesty before the God who already knows. He's not shocked by your tears. He's not offended by your pain. He invites it. He welcomes it. He says, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That rest isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's the kind of rest that allows you to stop fighting battles in your own strength and start laying them at the feet of the one who already won. And when God begins to heal, it's not just about forgetting the pain. It's about transforming it. He takes what was meant to destroy you and turns it into something that deepens you. The wound becomes a well. The scar becomes a sign. What was meant to bury you becomes the very thing that brings you closer to his heart. Because only those who have been broken can understand the power of being held by a God who never lets go. Only those who have wept can understand the sweetness of his comfort. Only those who have bled can testify of a healing that reaches where no doctor, no friend, no apology ever could. There is no wound too deep for the hands of God. No betrayal too severe, no memory too painful. What people do may leave you bleeding, but what God does will leave you whole. The world may give you surface remedies, distractions, revenge, numbing, but God goes beneath the surface. He goes to the root. He speaks to the part of you that's been silenced. He touches the part of you that no one else even sees, and when he touches it, things begin to shift. The heart begins to soften. The bitterness begins to dissolve. The storm in your mind begins to settle, not because the person changed, not because the past was erased, but because God entered the pain and declared that it no longer has power over your peace. Healing with God is not just about recovering. It's about becoming wiser, becoming stronger, becoming more compassionate, more discerning, more rooted in who he is. Because once you've been healed by God, you no longer need validation from man. Once you've been healed by God, You don't need to carry resentment just to prove how deep the pain was. You can forgive not because they deserved it, but because you were made for freedom, not for chains. You can move forward, not because the past didn't matter, but because your future matters more. You can rise, not because the wound didn't happen, but because the healer stepped in. Don't respond in the flesh, respond in the spirit. Because the flesh always wants the last word. The flesh wants revenge. The flesh wants to make them feel the pain they made you feel. The flesh wants to prove a point, protect your pride, defend your name. The flesh is loud, it's reactive, it's impulsive, it's emotional, and if you're not careful, the flesh will have you acting outside of your character, outside of your calling, outside of the will of God. When someone offends you, insults you, disrespects you, the natural instinct is to strike back, to raise your voice, to clap back, to expose, to insult, to prove. But that kind of reaction doesn't heal. It only multiplies the damage. It adds fuel to a fire that's already burning. It doesn't make you stronger. It makes you smaller, because responding in the flesh never brings peace. It may bring satisfaction for a moment, but it always leaves a stain. It damages relationships, it damages your witness, and it delays your growth. The enemy would love nothing more than to pull you into a fight that isn't even yours to begin with. Responding in the Spirit, though, is a different posture. It requires restraint. It requires discernment. It requires humility. It means choosing peace over pettiness, choosing grace over grudges, choosing wisdom over impulse. Responding in the Spirit doesn't mean you become a dorm. It means you become a vessel through which God's presence flows, even in the most difficult situations. A vessel that refuses to carry offense because it's already filled with something greater. To respond in the Spirit is to remember who you are and whose you are. It is to pause before reacting, to pray before speaking, to listen for the voice of God before moving. The Spirit will often lead you to be silent when your flesh is screaming to speak. The Spirit will tell you to bless them while your flesh wants to curse them. The Spirit will say, "Let it go," when your flesh wants to hold on for dear life. The Spirit doesn't respond to hurt with more hurt. It responds with healing. There's power in silence. There's strength in restraint. There's wisdom in walking away when you could have made a scene. There's authority in knowing you don't need to fight for yourself because heaven fights for you. When you respond in the Spirit, you allow God to be your defender. You take your hands off the situation and place it in His. You resist the urge to control and instead choose to trust. Trust that God sees. Trust that God knows. Trust that God will deal with what you cannot. Jesus modeled this perfectly. He was betrayed, mocked, falsely accused, spit on, beaten, and crucified, and yet He opened not His mouth in retaliation. He didn't curse the ones who cursed Him. He didn't destroy the ones who destroyed Him. He said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That's not weakness. That's divine strength. That's authority under control. That's spirit over flesh. When you respond in the Spirit, you break cycles. You disrupt the enemy's plan. You take the high road not because it's easy, but because it's holy. You choose to be led not by your emotions, but by your convictions. You understand that not every battle is yours to fight. Not every insult needs an answer. Not every offense deserves a reaction. You learn to pick your peace over your pride. Responding in the Spirit may feel like losing in the moment, but it's actually winning in the long run. It preserves your integrity. It keeps your heart pure. It keeps your conscience clean. It allows you to walk away with dignity, knowing you didn't stoop to the level of those who tried to pull you down. And in the process, God strengthens you. He matures you. He builds you, because spiritual responses come from spiritual discipline, and discipline is what develops depth. When you respond in the Spirit, people may not understand it. They may say you're soft. They may think you're weak. They may expect you to react the way everyone else does, but you're not called to be like everyone else. You're set apart. You're chosen. You're filled with something they can't see, but they will feel. And your response will speak louder than any argument ever could. You may feel like you're letting people get away with something, but you're actually getting free from it. You're releasing yourself from the burden of revenge. You're refusing to let someone else's actions dictate your behavior. You're keeping your soul anchored while everything around you tries to pull you into the storm. This isn't about pretending you're not hurt. This isn't about acting like nothing happened. This is about choosing to rise above it, to respond not with fleshly fire, but with spiritual fruit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. These are not weaknesses. These are weapons, weapons that disarm darkness, weapons that protect your destiny, weapons that show you're not just surviving the battle. You're mastering it from a higher place. Forgiveness is a decision, not a feeling. If you wait until you feel like forgiving, you may never do it. Feelings are unpredictable, unreliable, and often rooted in pain. They come and go, shift and sway with memories, with triggers, with reminders of what happened. But forgiveness is not about how you feel, it's about what you choose. It's a deliberate act of the will, a conscious choice to release someone from the debt they owe you, even when every part of your emotions says they don't deserve it. The truth is, the pain may still be there, the memory may still sting, the betrayal may still echo in your mind. Forgiveness doesn't mean those things vanish overnight. It doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It doesn't mean it didn't matter. It doesn't mean you're pretending it never happened. What it means is that you're choosing to no longer let what happened rule your heart. You're choosing to set yourself free from the prison of resentment. You're choosing peace over poison. You're choosing healing over hatred. Forgiveness is not saying it's okay when it wasn't. It's not excusing the behavior. It's not ignoring justice. It's not welcoming back someone who hasn't changed. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. It doesn't always mean restoring the same relationship. Sometimes it simply means you're no longer allowing that offense to control your thoughts, your joy, your identity. You're making a decision to take your power back by releasing what's been trying to hold you hostage. Many people confuse forgiveness with feelings because we live in a culture that tells us to follow our hearts. But Scripture never says to follow the heart. It says the heart is deceitful above all things. The heart will tell you to hold a grudge. The heart will tell you to wait for an apology. The heart will tell you to stay angry because it gives you a sense of control. But forgiveness doesn't flow from the heart. It flows from the Spirit, and the Spirit empowers you to do what the flesh resists. The Spirit says forgive, not because they're worthy, but because you are. When you decide to forgive, you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you, because unforgiveness is a heavy burden to carry. It drains your energy. It steals your sleep. It poisons your relationships. It clouds your judgment. It hardens your heart. It holds you back from walking in the fullness of joy and freedom that God intends for you. Holding on to bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't hurt them. It hurts you. It eats away at your peace, your faith, your future. Forgiveness is a decision that may need to be made over and over again. Some wounds are so deep that you'll have to forgive the same offense 1,000 times in your heart before the feelings catch up with your decision. But each time you forgive, you're loosening the grip it has on you. Each time you choose to release, You're gaining back territory the enemy tried to steal. Forgiveness is warfare. It's not weak, it's powerful. It's not passive, it's aggressive in the spirit. It's you saying, I will not be chained to this moment. I will not be defined by this pain. I will not carry this offense into my future. Jesus taught us to forgive 70 times 7, not because people won't hurt us that much, but because our hearts need to forgive that much. It's not about keeping score, it's about keeping your soul clean. Every time you make the decision to forgive, you're aligning yourself with the heart of God. You're walking in the footsteps of Christ, who forgave those who nailed him to a cross. He didn't wait until the pain was gone. He didn't wait until the crowd apologized. He made the decision in the midst of the suffering. Father, forgive them. That was not a feeling, that was a choice. Forgiveness may not always feel fair, but it is always freeing. It allows God to step in and deal with what you cannot. It allows healing to begin in places you thought would always be broken. It opens doors for peace to return where chaos used to live. It silences the voices of bitterness that once shouted in your mind. And as you continue to choose forgiveness, your heart becomes lighter, your perspective becomes clearer, and your spirit becomes stronger. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It's a lifestyle. It's a discipline. It's something you train your heart to do until it becomes your natural response. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because the freedom is. Not because the offender changed, but because you did. Not because they made it right, but because God is making you whole. Forgiveness is not something you do when you feel like it. It's something you decide to do over and over again until your soul is free from the grip of offense and your heart is filled with the peace that passes all understanding. Let go of bitterness to protect your peace. Because bitterness doesn't just affect how you feel about someone else. It affects who you become. It starts as a response to pain, but if left unchecked, it grows roots deep into your soul. Bitterness disguises itself as strength, as protection, as caution, but in reality, it's a silent poison. It hardens the heart, clouds the mind, and makes joy feel unreachable. You may carry it thinking it's keeping you strong, but it's actually keeping you stuck. Bitterness doesn't build, it breaks. It doesn't protect, it isolates. It doesn't heal, it infects. Bitterness is the result of unresolved offense. It forms when we hold on to what hurt us instead of surrendering it. Maybe they never apologized. Maybe they never admitted what they did. Maybe they moved on like nothing happened while you were left bleeding. And the enemy uses that silence, that injustice, to whisper lies. You have a right to stay angry. You have a right to hate them. You have a right to replay it over and over. And before you realize it, your peace has been replaced by torment. Your smile has been replaced by suspicion. Your purpose has been delayed by pain that was never meant to take root. Bitterness makes you relive what God wants to heal. It ties you to people who don't care they hurt you. It keeps you mentally chained to conversations, arguments, and moments you should have already outgrown. You think you're in control by holding onto the memory, but really, it's controlling you. Your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, even your prayers become tainted with the pain you refuse to release. And as long as bitterness lives in your heart, peace cannot. The two cannot share the same space. Peace is gentle, bitterness is loud. Peace forgives, bitterness remembers. Peace lets go, bitterness holds on. You don't have to deny that you were hurt. You don't have to pretend it didn't matter. But you do have to make a choice. A choice between carrying that bitterness or claiming your peace. A choice between rehearsing the offense or releasing it. A choice between being right and being free, because there's a cost to holding on to pain. It will rob your present with memories from the past. It will steal your worship, your clarity, your ability to love people who didn't hurt you. Bitterness will have you punishing new people for the wounds someone else caused. It will cause you to build walls instead of boundaries, to react instead of respond, to defend instead of discern. Letting go doesn't mean you agree with what happened. It means you're done letting it dictate your emotional health. It means you're choosing healing over hatred. It means you're surrendering the right to get even so you can finally get peace. Letting go is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the decision to say, I will no longer allow what they did to live rent free in my mind. I'm reclaiming my peace. I'm reclaiming my joy. I'm reclaiming my space. Bitterness has a way of creeping in quietly. It shows up in sarcasm, in resentment, in cynicism, in cold shoulders and distant stares. It can show up in your tone, in your silence, in your inability to celebrate someone else's blessing. That's why you have to guard your heart. You can't control what people do, but you can control what you hold on to. You can decide what lives in you. You can decide that bitterness has no room in your spirit, no voice in your decisions, no access to your future. God never designed you to carry bitterness. That's why it feels so heavy. That's why it's exhausting. That's why your peace disappears when you entertain those thoughts. You were made to carry peace, to walk in love, to live with a heart that's free. But that only happens when you're willing to let go. And sometimes the letting go is painful. Sometimes it means grieving what could have been. Sometimes it means releasing someone who never said sorry. Sometimes it means trusting God with justice instead of trying to make things right on your own. Peace is not passive. It's not something that just shows up. It's something you fight for. You protect it by choosing not to argue, not to clap back, not to nurse grudges. You protect it by forgiving when it's hard. You protect it by praying for people who never prayed for you. You protect it by creating space between you and toxic conversations, toxic thoughts, toxic behaviors. You protect it by knowing that your peace is more valuable than your pride. Letting go of bitterness is not a one-time act. It's a daily decision. Every time the memory returns, you choose to release it. Every time your heart wants to harden, you choose to soften. Every time you feel tempted to stay angry, you remind yourself that you were not made to live bitter. You were made to live free, and in that freedom is where peace lives. In that freedom is where clarity flows. In that freedom is where God meets you, not in the bitterness, but in the surrender. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of God in the middle of it. And you can't welcome His peace if your heart is already full of poison. Let it go, not because they earned it, but because you need it. Let it go, because what's ahead is worth more than what's behind. Let it go, because your peace is too valuable to be sacrificed for a pain you were never meant to carry forever. What they did doesn't define who you are. People may have mistreated you, lied about you, abandoned you, judged you, or tried to reduce you to a single painful moment. But their actions are not your identity. You are not the betrayal. You are not the abuse. You are not the rejection. You are not the mistake they made, the words they said, or the way they tried to diminish your worth. What they did was a moment, but who you are is a masterpiece. Their decisions didn't create you, and they don't get to label you. Pain has a voice, and if you're not careful, it will start to speak over your life louder than truth. It will tell you that you're not enough, that you're too broken, that you'll never be whole again, that your future is disqualified because of what happened. And those lies grow roots when you start accepting them as part of your identity. When you look in the mirror and see failure, see shame, see damage, that's not who you are. That's just a reflection of pain trying to blur your vision. But your value was set long before anyone had the chance to hurt you. You were made with purpose on purpose. What someone did to you doesn't cancel the design God placed within you. Their rejection doesn't cancel your calling. Their betrayal doesn't void your anointing. Their silence doesn't silence your voice. Their cruelty doesn't remove your capacity to love, to trust, to build again. You are not defined by their failure. You are defined by your Creator's intention. He doesn't look at you through the lens of your wound. He looks at you through the lens of His plan. The enemy would love to keep you stuck in the identity of your trauma, because as long as you believe the pain is your story, you'll never rise into the purpose that was written before the pain ever came. You'll live under a label someone else gave you instead of walking in the name God called you. You are not bitter, you are better. You are not forgotten, you are favored. You are not broken beyond repair, you are being rebuilt with grace. You are not what they called you, you are what God formed you to be. Healing begins when you separate your identity from your injury, when you can say, yes, they hurt me, but that hurt is not who I am. When you refuse to let what happened to you become how you see yourself. Because identity is powerful. What you believe about yourself will shape what you accept, what you pursue, and what you settle for. If you believe you're unwanted, you'll accept unhealthy love. If you believe you're damaged, you'll hide your gifts. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll sabotage your blessings. But when you know who you are, what they did can't shake you. You don't need their approval to be whole. You don't need their apology to move forward. You don't need them to validate what God already called valuable. You may not have closure, but you can still have clarity. Clarity about your worth. Clarity about your direction. Clarity about your strength. You don't have to wait for them to make it right to start living right. You don't have to wait for the wound to be forgotten to begin walking in healing. Sometimes people mistreat you because they don't see your value. Sometimes they see it and mistreat you because they're intimidated by it. Either way, their inability to love you properly doesn't change the truth of who you are. You are not what they did. You are not what they failed to do. You are not the result of their dysfunction. You are not a product of their immaturity. You are not stuck in the story they tried to write over your life. You are writing a new story, a better story, a redeemed story, and in that story, your pain is not the headline. It's the turning point. It's the moment everything shifted, the moment you decided that what they did would not define you, but it would develop you. That the betrayal would not bury you, it would build you. That the rejection would not reduce you, it would redirect you. Because what they meant for evil, God can still use for good. He can use the scar to reveal His healing. He can use the loss to show you what real love looks like. He can use the silence to speak to you in ways you've never heard before. You are not too far gone. You are not beyond repair. You are not unlovable, unworthy, or unwanted. You are chosen, you are loved, you are called, and no human action can erase what heaven has written. Let what they did be a lesson, not a label. Let it teach you, not trap you. Let it grow you, not define you. They don't get the final word. God does, and His word over you is still good, still strong, still true. So walk like you're healed even if you're still hurting. Talk like you're free even if the chains just broke. Show up like you're whole even if you're still being restored. What they did may have changed the chapter, but it didn't change the ending. You're still becoming. You're still rising. You're still loved. And what they did doesn't get to define who you are. God sees, God knows, and God will handle it. Even when no one else understands the depth of your pain, even when the injustice feels invisible, even when the ones who hurt you seem to walk away untouched, God sees it all. He is not blind to the wounds you carry in silence. He is not deaf to the cries you whisper through tears. He is not distant when you feel forgotten. In every moment of betrayal, abandonment, false accusation, rejection, or silence, God has been there. He saw what they did. He heard what they said. He knows what you carry, and more than that, He knows how to deal with it perfectly. When you've been wronged, your natural instinct is often to fix it yourself. To speak up, to fight back, to expose, to explain, to defend. There's a voice in your head saying, this isn't fair. They shouldn't get away with this. They need to pay for what they did. But trying to carry justice in your own strength will only wear you down. It drains your peace. It hijacks your focus. It traps you in emotional cycles of replaying the past and rehearsing revenge. And while you're busy trying to handle it, God is waiting for you to hand it over. God doesn't ask you to ignore what happened. He doesn't ask you to pretend it didn't hurt. He simply asks you to trust Him with it, because His justice is pure, His timing is perfect, His methods are righteous. He sees not only what was done to you, but why it was done. He sees the heart of the offender and the condition of your heart, too. He knows how to deal with them without damaging you. He knows how to bring justice without you having to lose your peace, your dignity, or your future. It's hard to let go when you feel misunderstood, when your name has been dragged, your motives questioned, your character attacked. It's hard to stay silent, but silence isn't weakness when it's rooted in trust. When you know that God is your defender, you don't have to exhaust yourself trying to prove your innocence. You don't have to chase people down to convince them of the truth. God has a way of vindicating the humble, of lifting the heads of those bowed in grief, of exalting those who quietly trust Him while others loudly accuse. There's peace in knowing you don't have to fight every battle. You just have to stay in position and let God be God. God doesn't forget. He doesn't misjudge. He doesn't miss the small moments that no one else saw. The sleepless nights, the moments you held your tongue when you could have retaliated, the tears you cried in private while smiling in public. He knows. He knows when you chose grace over revenge. He knows when you kept quiet out of wisdom, not fear. He knows when you forgave even though no one apologized. He knows when you wanted to give up, but you chose to stay faithful, and He honors that. He rewards that. He responds to that. You may look around and see others prospering while you're still bleeding. You may feel like evil is winning and righteousness is being mocked, but don't be fooled by appearances. God is not mocked. He is not absent. He is not indifferent. Just because He hasn't moved yet doesn't mean He isn't working. His justice is often slow in our eyes, but it is never late. When He handles it, He does so thoroughly, righteously, and redemptively. He doesn't just punish. He restores. He doesn't just correct. He heals. And He doesn't just silence lies. He reveals truth in a way that brings glory to His name. Sometimes God delays justice to develop your character. Sometimes He waits so your heart won't be filled with pride when He turns things around. Sometimes He allows the process to stretch you, to mature you, to teach you to rely on Him completely. Because the goal isn't just to get even, it's to become whole, and true healing doesn't come through revenge. It comes through release, releasing the need to control the outcome, releasing the desire to be understood by everyone, releasing the burden of vengeance into the hands of a God who sees the full picture. You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to strategize how to make them feel what you felt. You don't have to waste your life waiting for them to apologize, to acknowledge, to change. You can live free now, knowing that God has not forgotten you. He sees the heartache behind your strength. He sees the injustice behind their smiles. He sees what they thought was hidden, and He will not let it go unanswered. There is great comfort in knowing that you are not invisible to heaven, that your pain has not gone unnoticed, that your story isn't over just because you've been wounded. The same God who sees also redeems, He restores, He lifts, He rebuilds. And He makes all things new, not just by removing what hurt you, but by transforming what hurt you into the very thing that elevates you. So trust Him with it. Trust Him with the outcome. Trust Him with your name, your future, your healing. Even when it's hard, even when you feel forgotten, even when justice seems delayed, He is faithful, He is present, He is righteous, He is not watching from a distance. He is right there, close to the brokenhearted, and ready to carry what you were never meant to carry alone. Your destiny is too great to be delayed by offense. Offense may feel justified, especially when you've been wronged, misunderstood, or treated unfairly, but holding on to it can quietly sabotage your forward momentum. The enemy knows he can't take away your calling, so he tries to distract you from it. One of his most subtle tools is offense. It doesn't show up like a storm. It creeps in like a shadow, through a harsh word, a cold shoulder, a betrayal, a missed opportunity, or someone's silence when you needed support. And if you don't deal with it, it will grow roots in your spirit and slow your pace, distort your vision and harden your heart. Your destiny demands focus. It demands clarity. It demands movement. But offense locks your eyes on the wrong thing. Instead of seeing what's ahead, you start looking back, overanalyzing what was said, what wasn't said, how it made you feel, and how they still haven't made it right. You can't run forward while looking backward. You can't build when you're busy nursing wounds. You can't rise when you're weighed down by bitterness. Offense will rob your energy, drain your joy, and anchor you in a season God's trying to lead you out of. The problem isn't that people hurt you. That's inevitable. The problem is when you let what they did take up residence in your soul. When you give offense a permanent address in your heart, it begins to shape your decisions, your attitude, your prayers, and your perspective. You stop trusting, you stop dreaming, you stop growing, and little by little you find yourself stuck. Gifted but stagnant, called but cold, destined but distracted. Because offense is a trap. It doesn't just hurt you in the moment. It holds you hostage for the long haul if you let it. God has placed something great inside of you, a future that carries impact, healing, influence, legacy, but that future isn't found in the familiar patterns of offense and unforgiveness. It's found in obedience, surrender, and the ability to keep moving forward even when you've been wounded. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not every insult requires a reply. Not every betrayal needs to be avenged. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep walking. Keep building, keep serving, keep loving, even with the pain still in your chest. Because what's in front of you is far more valuable than what's behind you. Offense feels like it gives you control, but it actually takes it. It makes you a prisoner to what they did. You replay the conversations. You rehearse the arguments. You fantasize about the moment you'll finally speak your truth and put them in their place. But while you're doing all that, time is passing. Opportunities are being missed. Joy is being stolen. Peace is being drained. And the assignment on your life is being delayed. Not because you're not gifted, but because you're too distracted by a wound you were never meant to keep open. Jesus knew offense would come. He didn't say if offenses come, he said when. Because people are imperfect, they disappoint, they misunderstand, they fail, but he also showed us what it looks like to stay focused. To love those who mock you, to forgive those who hurt you, to stay silent when falsely accused, to keep walking even when those closest to you walk away. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because the mission is greater than the pain. The purpose is greater than the offense. The calling is greater than the insult. The destiny is too divine to be delayed by drama. There are people waiting on the other side of your obedience. People who will be healed, inspired, empowered because you didn't stop when it got hard. There are doors that will open not just because of your talent, but because of your character, because you chose integrity over retaliation, because you chose peace over pettiness, because you chose growth over grudges. Every time you let offense go, you make space for God to move. You make room for favor, for healing, for clarity. You rise above what was meant to pull you down. You say, I'm not going to let this keep me from what I was born to do. You are too anointed to live offended, too gifted to stay stuck, too chosen to be distracted. The enemy doesn't come after people with no future. He attacks the ones carrying something significant. So if offense has shown up, it's not a sign you're weak. It's a sign you're close. Close to a breakthrough, close to the next level, close to the thing you've been praying for. But the test is, can you keep your heart pure when it would be easier to be bitter? Can you keep walking when you want to sit in your pain? Can you trust God to handle what hurt you while you handle what He's assigned to you? Don't let small offenses cancel a great calling. Don't let petty battles delay a powerful destiny. Don't let temporary emotions block eternal impact. You were made for more than the argument, more than the clap back, more than the bitterness. You were made to rise. You were made to overcome. You were made to move forward with grace, strength, and conviction. Your destiny is calling, and nothing the enemy throws, no betrayal, no insult, no rejection, can stop it unless you let it. Offense may feel like armor, but it's actually a weight. And if you want to run this race, you've got to lay it down. You've got to decide that peace is more important than proving your point, that purpose is more important than payback, and that your destiny is too great to be delayed by offense. You don't need an apology to be free. Waiting for someone to say, I'm sorry, before you move forward is giving them control over your peace. Some people may never acknowledge what they did. They may never take ownership of how they hurt you, and some may not even realize the depth of the wound they caused. Others might be fully aware, but too prideful or indifferent to admit it. If your freedom depends on their apology, then you've put your healing in the hands of someone who may never be willing to offer it. That's a prison, not a path to peace. Freedom isn't something others give you. It's something you choose. It's the decision to release the weight of what happened, not because it didn't matter, but because it matters too much to let it hold you hostage. An apology can feel like closure, but true closure doesn't come from their mouth. It comes from your heart deciding to let go. You don't have to wait on them to feel remorse before you start walking in joy. You don't have to wait for them to come around before you step into purpose. Your healing is not on hold because of someone else's silence. Unforgiveness builds walls around your heart, but those walls don't just keep people out. They keep you trapped inside. It's like carrying around a heavy chain, waiting for the person who hurt you to bring the key. But what if they never do? What if they don't care enough to make it right? What if they've moved on and you're still stuck? That's not freedom. That's a life held back by a moment that should have already been surrendered. You don't need their words to unlock your peace. You have the power to say, I release this, I forgive, I choose freedom. Letting go doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you're excusing it or forgetting it. It means you're refusing to let it define your present and poison your future. You can acknowledge the pain without becoming it. You can remember the lesson without reliving the wound. Forgiveness isn't about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about choosing not to let the hurt rule your life. It's about taking back your power and refusing to live under the shadow of someone else's failure. Sometimes the most freeing moment in your life comes not when someone says they're sorry, but when you decide they don't have to. That's when you know you've grown, when your peace is no longer tied to their guilt, when your identity is no longer shaped by their actions, when your value is no longer determined by how they treated you. That's when real freedom begins, when you stop waiting and start walking. There's strength in saying, they didn't say sorry, but I'm still healing. They didn't make it right, but I'm still moving forward. They didn't ask for forgiveness, but I've already given it. That strength doesn't come from pretending you're okay. It comes from trusting God to deal with what they did, while you deal with becoming who you're called to be. It's about refusing to let bitterness steal one more day of your joy. You have things to do, purpose to fulfill, people to impact. There's a calling on your life that's bigger than their apology. If you wait for them to validate your pain, you might miss your next chapter. God didn't call you to pause your growth until they realize their mistake. He called you to rise above it, to keep building, to keep loving, to keep becoming, even with the scar, even without the closure. Some apologies would feel good to hear, but they wouldn't fix anything. Words can't undo wounds. Only God can heal what was broken. And sometimes He heals you in such a way that you no longer need what you once thought you did. That's the beauty of grace. It fills the gaps left by people. It makes peace possible even when reconciliation isn't. It brings strength to move forward without dragging the pain with you. Forgiveness is an act of faith. It's saying, God, I trust you to handle this better than I ever could. It's laying the hurt at His feet, not because you feel like it, but because you believe He's just, He's kind, and He knows how to heal what others didn't even notice they broke. Forgiveness is not letting them off the hook. It's letting yourself off the hook of carrying something you were never meant to hold forever. There's a freedom that comes when you stop waiting for them to fix it. When you stop needing their remorse to validate your worth. When you stop hoping they'll finally understand. You may never get the words you wanted, but you can still live with wholeness, with purpose, with joy. You can still thrive, you can still love again, you can still dream again, not because they said sorry, but because you made a decision that they're not worth your peace, your sleep, your hope, your identity, or your destiny. You get to choose how long the wound stays open. You get to decide whether that moment defines you or develops you. Don't give someone else the power to delay your healing. Don't wait for them to feel bad before you feel better. You don't need their permission to be whole. You don't need their agreement to move on. You don't need their apology to be free. Walking in love is spiritual warfare. It's not passive, weak, or naive. It's one of the most powerful and defiant acts a believer can make in a world full of offense, pride, and revenge. When you choose to love instead of hate, forgive instead of retaliate, bless instead of curse, you're not just being kind. You're waging war. You're resisting the schemes of the enemy who thrives on division, bitterness, and resentment. The enemy doesn't tremble when you shout or argue. He trembles when you love anyway, when you extend grace where it's not deserved, when you stay soft in a world that constantly pushes you to harden. That's spiritual warfare at its highest level. Loving people who love you back is easy, but loving those who have wronged you, ignored you, or talked about you, that takes strength from another realm. It's not natural, it's supernatural. It requires a deep surrender to the Holy Spirit. It requires you to lay down your right to be angry, your desire to prove a point, your craving to be vindicated, and instead pick up the cross of humility. And in that moment, heaven fights on your behalf. Because when you walk in love, you step into alignment with God's heart, and that is where true victory begins. The enemy uses people to provoke you, not just to hurt your feelings, but to poison your heart. He doesn't just want to cause pain. He wants to contaminate your spirit. He wants you to become bitter, closed off, defensive, and angry. He wants to turn your heart cold so that love becomes a distant memory and grace becomes something you no longer give. But love is the resistance, love is the weapon, it breaks the cycle. It says, you won't change who I am, you won't harden what God has softened, you won't bait me into your battle because I'm fighting a higher one. Every time you walk in love, you're disarming the enemy. He doesn't know what to do with a believer who loves their enemies, prays for those who persecute them, and chooses peace over pride. Love silences gossip. Love interrupts division. Love covers offense. Love outlasts rumors. Love disarms anger. Love destroys revenge. Love fights battles that fists and words never could. It wins wars in the unseen while keeping your soul intact in the seen. The enemy loses every time you choose to love in a moment when hate would have been easier. Walking in love doesn't mean you ignore boundaries. It doesn't mean you enable toxic behavior or tolerate abuse. Love has wisdom. Love has strength. Love knows when to walk away in peace instead of staying and arguing in pride. But even in separation, love can still reign. You don't have to speak ill of them. You don't have to expose them. You don't have to seek to destroy their reputation. You can walk away and still walk in love. That's the warfare. Staying clean even when the situation is dirty. Staying kind even when others are cruel. Staying true to who God called you to be, not who pain tried to make you become. Love is not just an emotion, it's a decision. A discipline, a lifestyle, a powerful spiritual position. It's not something you feel your way into. It's something you choose your way into every single day, in conversations where you want to defend yourself, in moments where you feel misunderstood, in spaces where you're tempted to match energy with those who have hurt you. Love says, I don't need to win this argument. I don't need to get the last word. I don't need to act out of character. I'll let my fruit speak for me. God is love, and when you walk in love, you walk in Him. That means you're not walking alone. He empowers you to do what the flesh can't. The Holy Spirit gives you patience when you're tired, gentleness when you're annoyed, self-control when you want to snap, and kindness when it feels undeserved. This isn't about you pretending to be strong. It's about you being filled with strength from above. Love is a fruit of the Spirit, and the fruit only grows when the root is deep. That's why spending time with God is vital. You can't pour love from an empty soul. You have to stay connected to the vine if you want to bear fruit that defies the enemy's attacks. Sometimes the greatest warfare is saying nothing, holding your peace. Choosing compassion, holding the door open for someone who shut it on you, smiling at someone who avoided you, speaking life when they've spoken lies. The world calls that weak. Heaven calls that war. Every act of love is a strike against the kingdom of darkness, because love heals what hate breaks. Love restores what offense ruins. Love reconnects what pride separates. Love creates space for God to move, and that is what makes it unstoppable. There is power in love. It may not always be loud, but it's loud in the spirit. It may not always be noticed by others, but it's noticed by heaven. It changes the atmosphere. It changes families. It changes generations. You don't need to shout louder to fight better. You just need to love deeper. Because love is not the easy route. It's the narrow one, the powerful one, the one Jesus walked. And if He won the greatest battle through love, then so will you. Forgiveness makes you powerful, not weak. The world might tell you that to forgive is to surrender, to let someone get away with what they did, to forfeit your strength, or to seem soft and naive. But in the kingdom of God, forgiveness is not surrender to man, it's surrender to God. It's not weakness, it's strength under control. It's not losing, it's letting go of the burden that keeps you from winning. Holding a grudge feels like power in the moment, but it slowly robs you of joy, clarity, and peace. Forgiveness restores those things. It reclaims your authority over the pain. It says, "You may have hurt me, but you don't control me. I'm not staying chained to what you did." There is nothing weak about choosing freedom. It takes a strong person to forgive someone who never said sorry. It takes courage to release people who aren't even remorseful. It takes deep inner strength to say, "You don't owe me anything. I release you." That doesn't mean what happened wasn't wrong. It means you've decided that healing is more important than harboring, that moving forward is more valuable than remaining stuck, that peace is worth more than payback. Weakness holds on to bitterness because it feels safer. Strength releases it because it knows God is the one who settles all accounts. Forgiveness shifts the power dynamic. As long as you're stuck in offense, you're living under the shadow of what happened. You're letting someone else's actions control your emotions, your choices, your energy. But when you forgive, you take that power back. You refuse to be defined by the pain. You refuse to let someone else dictate your joy. You decide to stop bleeding from a wound they're not even thinking about anymore. That is power, holy, righteous God-given power to say, "This ends with me. I will not carry this into my future." Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering and still choosing peace. It's recalling the pain without reliving the bitterness. It's honoring your emotions while refusing to be imprisoned by them. It's not pretending nothing happened. It's deciding that what happened won't define what's next. Weakness seeks revenge. Strength chooses restoration. Even if the relationship doesn't continue, even if the boundaries are necessary, even if the connection is over, restoration within your own soul is still possible. That's what forgiveness gives you: a clean heart, a free mind, an open spirit. When you forgive, you reflect the character of God. He didn't wait for us to deserve mercy before offering it. He didn't demand perfection before extending grace. He forgave us while we were still sinners, and every time we choose to do the same, every time we lay down our right to retaliate and pick up the posture of mercy, we align ourselves with His heart. That's what makes it powerful. Forgiveness puts you in agreement with heaven. It draws strength from a place deeper than your pain. It reminds you that you are not a prisoner to your past. You are a child of God, walking in freedom, led by grace. The enemy wants you to believe that forgiveness is for the other person, but it's not. It's for you. It releases you from the chains of resentment. It detoxes your heart from the poison of offense. It clears your vision to see the new things God is doing. You can't embrace your future if your hands are full of past pain. You can't hear God clearly when your thoughts are consumed by vengeance. You can't fully walk in power while carrying the weight of anger. Forgiveness isn't a favor to your enemy. It's a gift to your own soul. There's nothing passive about forgiving someone. It's one of the most intentional, forceful acts you can make against the darkness trying to settle in your life. Every time you say, "I forgive," you break chains, you silence lies, you tear down strongholds, you uproot bitterness, you resist the enemy, you reclaim the parts of you that offense tried to steal. That's not weakness. That's warfare. That's the boldness of a believer who knows that vengeance belongs to God and peace belongs to them. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. You may not feel like it. You may still be hurting. You may still have questions. But the power lies in choosing it anyway, and sometimes you'll have to choose it daily. Every time the memory comes back, choose it again. Every time the sting hits your heart, choose it again. Forgiveness is a process, but it begins with a decision. A powerful decision that says, "I refuse to let this anchor me in pain any longer." People will disappoint. They will fail. They will wound you in ways that feel permanent. But forgiveness says their actions don't get to write the final word. You still have a future. You still have purpose. You still have joy that can't be stolen and peace that can't be shaken. Forgiveness clears the path for you to walk in it fully. You don't have to wait for closure. You don't need their remorse. You don't have to carry the offense. You have the power to forgive, and when you do, you walk in a strength that the world can't understand, but heaven fully honors.